Discover the miraculous revelation of Melchizedek, the unexpected divine blessing in God's plan. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, as the sun dipped below the hills of Canaan, weary from the clamor of battle, Abram approached the gates of his encampment. The dust of the road clung to him like a second skin, mingling with the sweat and dirt of a fierce conflict. He had secured a miraculous victory against the kings of the east, rescuing his nephew Lot, yet a weight heavy upon his heart bore testimony to the cost of his triumph. The shadows lengthened, as if the very land acknowledged the turmoil within him. As Abram regained his breath, he discerned a figure emerging from the mist of evening light. Clad in rich robes that shimmered like stars against a darkening sky, Melchizedek, king of Salem and priest of God Most High, drew near. His presence carried a divine essence, thickening the air around them with reverence and expectation, a rendezvous crafted by heavenly hands, bridging the sacred with the earthly. Without a word, Abram knelt before this king, his heart resonating with the weight of destiny. Melchizedek lifted his hands, a source of blessing that seemed to echo in the very chambers of Abram's spirit. Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. Each syllable reinforced the covenant promises etched into Abram's soul, stirring faith that glimmered amidst uncertainty. In that ancient land, rife with the echoes of tribal rivalries, the offering of a tithe became an act pregnant with profound significance. As Abram presented gifts to Melchizedek, he unknowingly sowed seeds for future generations, crafting a spiritual tribute that transcended time and ineffably anchored the community in a principle of trust toward God's provision. Yet lurking just beyond this sacred moment was Sodom, a city verging on moral decay, its wealth and allure a tantalizing temptation that could sway even the strongest heart. As twilight deepened, Melchizedek spoke, not merely as a monarch, but as a voice of divine revelation. Hints of an eternal priesthood echoed through the fabric of Abram's being, tugging at his consciousness. Could he accept the king of Sodom's offer, glittering with the promise of earthly success, or remain steadfast to God's enduring commitment that had brought him thus far? The path ahead splintered before him, a crossroads of destiny. The tension mounted, each breath a prayer amid swirling spirals of doubt. The weight of covenant, the legacy of faith lived out, and the future of those in his charge hung precariously in balance. With the stars igniting the night sky above, Abram faced a stark choice, a moment that demanded faith daring enough to defy human logic and cling to the unseen. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. As Melchizedek's enigmatic presence lingered, he seemed to whisper truths that beckoned Abram forward, urging him to trust in the overarching divine narrative. This was a revelation of God's unyielding sovereignty, wrapped in an invitation to traverse the paths of righteousness. Would Abram choose humble obedience to God's promises, or would the seductive call of worldly wealth ensnare him? The answer lay within the unresolved mysteries of the night, waiting to unfold like a divine tapestry woven into the stories of eternity. As the stars twinkled down like scattered diamonds upon the vastness of night, Abram felt a stirring in his spirit akin to the softest whisper of the wind. The words of Melchizedek echoed in the silence, resonating with the truths of the Almighty, "For you are blessed, chosen to be a father of many nations." An unseen hand tugged at the very essence of his being, compelling him toward a deeper understanding of his divine calling. In the face of worldly temptation, Melchizedek continued, "The heart of man is tested. Each choice ripples through time, shaping destinies yet to unfold." Abram, grappling with the weight of these revelations, glimpsed the magnitude of his life's purpose. He stood at the precipice of a monumental decision. His fidelity to God's covenant could echo through generations, or his acquiescence to Sodom's allure could pave the way to ruin. The king of Sodom, a figure of pride and decadence, had approached him, offering riches abundant. "Give me the persons, and take the goods for yourself," that king had said, his voice slick with the glimmer of gold and silver. Yet Abram discerned the hollow promises veiled within those words. His heart trembled at the very thought of forsaking the path laid before him, for blood and soil were tied to faithfulness that stretched far beyond the grasp of earthly spoils. With each breath, Abram reflected on the manifold blessings of the Most High. He had witnessed God's hand upon his life, leading him forth through trials, granting victory against insurmountable foes, and now standing before him was Melchizedek, the high priest, a man chosen by God to reign over both spiritual and temporal matters. He was reminded of the promise God made to him, one that proclaimed, "I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you," Genesis 12 verse 2. "Lift up your eyes, Abram," Melchizedek said, "gaze fixed on the renowned skies, for the promise of God is alive and awaits those who persist in hope." The hallmarks of patriarchal history were reading themselves like a scroll before him, and he stood amid the haze of divine possibility, waiting for the faith to act. As he contemplated the weight of the offered riches, the sacred priest gestured toward the heavens, "Your reward shall be great, not from earth's treasures, but from the hand of him who created the heavens." The path of integrity shone bright, illuminating the sacred over the seductive, righteousness over recklessness. In that moment of revelation, Abram could not yield to the wiles of the evil one embodied in Sodom's allure. With the courage of a heart fortified by divine promise, he stood firm and proclaimed, "I have lifted my hand to the Lord, God Most High, Creator of heaven and earth, that I would not take a thread or a sandal strap or anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich," Genesis 14 verses 22 to 23. Thus, he chose the path of faith, sealing a solemn vow to uphold the ancestral call to trust and obedience. As the night deepened, Melchizedek offered a final blessing, hands raised in reverence, "May you walk in the light, and may the Lord guide your steps. For the promise is unfolding, and a seed will be established through you that shall bless all nations," Genesis 12 verse 3. As the dawning light of morning approached, Abram's heart brimmed with newfound resolve and faith. Yet unknown to him, further trials awaited, ones that would challenge every fiber of his being and beckon him towards an even greater trust in God's sovereign design. For the whisper of divine providence loomed on the horizon, a deeper revelation of God's enduring promise yet to be fulfilled, a new chapter destined to unveil God's ultimate plan for all mankind. Abram awoke with the dawn, the sunlight breaking through as if to herald the new beginnings God had promised. An eagerness nestled in his heart, yet a shadow of unease stirred within him. Each step on the earth felt heavier now, for the call that lay before him was not simply to prosper but to lead, to embark on a journey that would alter the fate of nations. As he turned from the heights of doubt, his gaze fell upon the horizon where the land beckoned. He recalled Melchizedek's blessing, a reminder that he wasn't merely a wanderer, he was chosen. As he prepared to journey back to his people, the Lord's presence enveloped him, a palpable reminder of the covenant made, the oath that was his to uphold. "Walk before me, and be blameless," the voice of the Lord echoed softly, resonating in the depths of his spirit. Yet, doubt clouded his mind. How could he be a father of many nations when he had no son to carry forth the promise? With every step, his thoughts turned to Sarai, and the longing within him deepened. "What shall I do with this promise, Lord?" he murmured as he wandered toward the shade of an ancient oak. As if in answer, the voice surged within him again, "Look now toward heaven, and count the stars if you are able to number them. So shall your descendants be." Awe washed over him, but the weight of his age bore heavily upon him. How could this be? He cast his eyes downwards, wrestling with the seed of disbelief that dared to sprout amidst the faith he had nurtured. Then the Lord spoke yet again, "I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to inherit it." Hope flickered anew. A promise echoed like thunder. God would give him the land, and in that assurance, a nation would be born. But Abram faltered, questioning, "How shall I know that I will inherit it?" Deep in his heart, a desire for reassurance rose, seeking to touch the tangible workings of the divine. And so the Lord unveiled a stark yet glorious enactment of his covenant. He commanded Abram, "Bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, and a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon." With trembling hands, Abram obeyed, splitting the animals in two and laying their pieces opposite each other. The sun dipped low, casting shadows as darkness fell around him. Yet in that deepening twilight, the presence of the Lord drew nearer, a holy radiant glow illuminating Abram's heart. Suddenly, a dreadful great darkness descended upon him, filling him with trembling. And God revealed an ominous truth: "Know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and they will afflict them 400 years. The prophecy hung heavy in the air, like a storm cloud laden with rain, yet God spoke with tenderness. "But afterward, they shall come out with great possessions." This divine foreshadowing deepened Abram's understanding, a realization that beyond the immediate trials lay a divine tapestry woven through time, a promise that would one day blossom into a radiant victory. "To your descendants, I have given this land," the Lord declared, pointing to the expanse stretching from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates. As the darkness gave way to the light of God's covenant, a smoking oven and a burning torch passed between the pieces, a divine sign of his eternal fidelity. In that moment, Abram knew, this was no empty promise, but a profound assurance of God's enduring plan. In the silence that followed, as the weight of prophecy lingered like incense, Abram was left contemplating the vastness of God's intention. Little did he know that within the struggles to come, the very fabric of redemption for all creation would be anchored within his lineage. For in those sacred hours, the promises not only shaped his destiny but heralded the unfolding of a divine promise that would echo throughout human history. The melody of God's sovereign design played on, leaving in its wake a question that would stir the hearts of all who would follow: how would the hope of nations arise from this covenant made in shadow? And it came to pass that the sun rose with a golden hue, illuminating the land that echoed with the very footsteps of the faithful. Abram awoke anew, a renewed vigor coursing through his veins as the cool breeze whispered the promise of the Almighty. With each moment, the weight of God's covenant burned bright within him, igniting hope that fueled his heart. As Abram gathered his belongings, Sarai approached him, her gentle eyes reflecting both worry and love. "My lord," she said, "the promise torments my soul. You are to be a father of many nations, yet we stand alone without a child to call our own." Her voice trembled, echoing the deep longing nestled within them both. "I have sought the Lord's face, and he has confirmed his word," Abram replied, attempting to soothe her fears. "The heavens declare our future, Sarai. Look at the stars, for they are countless, just as he has promised." Yet a flicker of concern took root in Sarai's heart. What if the fulfillment of this promise lies not within us? Perhaps we must seek a path beyond ourselves, she suggested, the hope of bearing a child mingling with her desperation. Abram heard her words, and uncertainty washed over him like a murky tide. He pondered the fragility of their situation and the provision of God. In a moment of human reasoning, he considered the potential of adopting a servant in his household to fulfill the divine edict. "Is not Eliezer of Damascus the heir of all I have?" he mused aloud. Sarai, taking his hand, replied with resolve, "Take Hagar, my maid, perhaps through her, the promise may come to fruition." The fleeting allure of urgency dazzled in the haze of desperation, and Abram, with his heart torn, agreed to her proposal. But the intimacy of that decision bore its own fruit, and the path they chose diverged from faith into shadows. Hagar conceived, and the joy turned to rivalry as the echoes of Sarai's barrenness ignited bitterness within her heart. "My wrong be upon you, Abram," she cried, filled with an anguish she could not contain. As Hagar's pride grew, so did Sarai's misery. And in the throes of that conflict, God's voice spoke through the growing storm. "What have you done?" It beckoned in the quiet, reminding Abram of a covenant rooted not in human endeavor but divine orchestration. Faced with turmoil, Abram turned to the Lord in prayer. "Will you not guide us, O Sovereign One? Show me the way through this trial." And the Lord appeared to him once more in a vision, a word of correction entwined with unyielding promise. "You shall bear a son through your own body, not through another's," he declared, sealing his intention with divine authority. Abram fell upon his face in reverent despair, aware of his frailty against the backdrop of such immense glory. "How can this be?" he whispered, the embers of doubt flaring amidst an unwavering hope. Yet the Lord spoke, "My covenant shall not fail. You are not forgotten, your time will come. This child will be the seed of a generation destined to bless the earth." With every word, understanding began to rise within Abram. The fabric of God's plan was woven intricately through their obedience and struggle. Though the days would unfold with trials ahead, the promise remained lodged in the depths of their hearts, a promise that would one day echo from generation to generation. As Abram turned his gaze toward the distant mountains, he felt a stirring in his spirit, a longing for the fulfillment of the covenant. Within this human intricacy resides a divine thread leading to the tapestry of salvation, a resolution to be uncovered in the fullness of time as God's sovereign design unfurled from the roots of his lineage. And so, the stage was set, a journey into uncertainty yet crowned with the assurance of God's unwavering faithfulness. For, in the end of it all, an even greater revelation awaited just beyond the horizon. Would their waiting not only prepare them but herald the dawn of a nation destined to walk in the shadows of the Almighty? And it came to pass, in the days that followed, that Abram journeyed through the land of Canaan with his heart heavy yet hopeful. He wandered beneath the expanse of heaven, contemplating the weight of the promise that had been laid upon his shoulders. As he dwelt in the land, he built altars unto the Lord, calling upon his name at every opportunity. With each sacrifice, Abram sought to remind himself and those around him of the covenant that had been established, a covenant that spoke of descendants as numerous as the stars. And yet, the passage of time bore no seed within Sarai's womb, and the strain of their situation grew heavier with each passing day. One evening, during a time of rest beneath the twilight sky, as the stars began to emerge like jewels in the firmament, there came a traveler, a man of majestic presence and mystery. With garments woven in fine linen and a countenance that resonated with authority and grace, he approached Abram, who rose to greet him. "Who art thou, traveler?" Abram inquired, sensing a divine aura surrounding him. "I am a priest of the Most High God, Melchizedek, King of Salem," the man declared, his voice deep and soothing as the gentle winds that once caressed the shores of creation. "I have come to bless you, Abram, for the Lord your God has granted you victory over your enemies." In awe, Abram's heart swelled with reverence, understanding the significance of this divine encounter. "Blessed be the God Most High, who has delivered my enemies into my hand," he exclaimed, offering forth a tenth of all he possessed to this kingly priest, a sign of worship and gratitude. Melchizedek accepted the offering with a solemn grace, and he spoke words that echoed through the chambers of Abram's soul. "Blessed are you, Abram, of God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And blessed be the God who has delivered you," he proclaimed, his blessing carving a path of divine assurance through the darkness wherein Abram now walked. In that moment, Abram felt a spark of renewed hope ignite within, as if heaven itself whispered a confirmation of his purpose. He grasped the truth that his struggle, his faith, and his unwavering dedication were recognized in the heavenly realms. Yet Sarai stood by, observing the exchange with mingled emotions, admiration, curiosity, and the weight of her own unfulfilled desire. She had known the promise of motherhood but yearned for the tangibility of the blessing that seemed ever elusive. "Will you press into the heart of God?" she urged, her voice trembling with a mixture of hope and despair. "Will you seek him once more, that he may open my womb?" And Abram, with sacred urgency, took Sarai's hands into his own, lifting them to God in fervent prayer. "O Lord, my God, you have spoken of descendants, grant this cry of our hearts, I beseech thee, bring forth life from Sarai, that we may rejoice in the fulfillment of your promise." In that sacred moment, an echo of divine response surged through the heavens, a whisper of a plan that was not yet unveiled but was rooted in the love and sovereignty of the Almighty. Days turned to weeks, and the tension within their hearts and home grew. And yet Melchizedek's blessing lingered, a prophetic reminder that the promise was not only for Abram but for all the nations that would arise from him. As hope and futility intertwined, it was evident that God was orchestrating a grand design, not only for Abram but for all of humanity. For hidden in the crevices of their trials was the dawn of a promise far greater than they could perceive, a promise that would reveal a lineage blessed through covenant, intertwined with the very fabric of heaven's decree. Thus, as those stars flickered in the night sky, each one a mirror of God's faithfulness, the question loomed large in the hearts of Abram and Sarai: in the wait, would there emerge a miracle that would change the course of existence, heralding the advent of a blessing meant for all peoples? And it came to pass after many days that Sarai, burdened with longing and the weight of barrenness, approached Abram with a heart full of turmoil. "Behold now, the Lord has restrained me from bearing," she spoke with a quiver in her voice. "I pray thee, go in unto my maid, it may be that I may obtain children by her." Abram, though saddened by his wife's plea, recognized the depths of her anguish, and hearkened unto her words. Thus, he took Hagar, the Egyptian maid, and made her his wife, for he sought to fulfill the promise of God in his own strength. And Sarai gave Hagar to Abram, and he came unto her, and she conceived. When Hagar saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. Sarai's heart was pierced with bitterness, and she said to Abram, "My wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid into thy bosom," and when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. The Lord judge between me and thee. But Abram sought to ease her troubled heart. "Behold, thy maid is in thy hand, do to her as it pleaseth thee." Sarai then dealt harshly with Hagar, and she fled from her presence into the wilderness, where an angel of the Lord met her by a spring of water. "Hagar, Sarai's maid," the angel called softly, "whence camest thou, and whither wilt thou go?" She answered, "I flee from the face of my mistress Sarai." The angel of the Lord spoke to her, saying, "Return to thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and thou shalt call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction." And the angel continued, "He shall be a wild man, his hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren." Hagar, filled with reverence, declared, "Thou God sayest me," for she perceived that she had encountered the God who meets the afflicted in their distress. And she returned to Sarai as instructed, her heart humbled, her vision sharpened by the certainty of divine purpose. Meanwhile, Abram continued to dwell in Canaan, and years rolled on, yet the promise remained unfulfilled in its fullness, and each passing moon brought both weariness and hope. Until one day, the Lord appeared to Abram, saying, "I am the Almighty God, walk before me, and be thou perfect. And I will make my covenant between me and thee, and will multiply thee exceedingly." Abram fell upon his face, and God spoke to him in boldness, "As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham, for a father of many nations have I made thee." With every word, the weight of the covenant lifted celestially above the clouds of doubt. God also made known that Sarai's name was to be changed to Sarah, for she would be a mother of nations, and kings of people would come from her. Abram marveled at the revelations, for in the midst of his fruitless waiting, God was stirring the foundations of his faith. "Oh, that Ishmael might live before thee!" He cried out, yet the Lord responded with unwavering promise, "Sarah shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant." At this declaration, the promise deepened, entwining not just a lineage of nations but a testimony of faith and fulfillment across generations. For what lay ahead was not merely a singular event but the very fabric of a heavenly tapestry woven through trials, joys, sorrows, and divine intention. Thus, even within the shadows of their waiting, the heart of God throbbed with a purpose far greater than they could fathom, for in the birth of Isaac, the unfolding plan of salvation for all humankind would begin to take shape. And as the sand of the seashore, so too would their descendants be, as countless as the stars. But what they did not yet know was that this promise would weave into the greatest narrative of redemption, a story that transcended time, for God as sovereign will was working toward a revelation that would reveal his glory to the nations. And it came to pass, when the days were fulfilled that the Lord had appointed in his covenant, that the presence of his promise would indeed flourish within Abraham's life. As years continued to unfold thick with expectation, Abraham settled in the land of Canaan, recounting the word of the Lord in his heart. In the tent, under the shade of the oaks of Mamre, the three visitors, messengers of God, drew near one afternoon. Abraham stood at the door of the tent and saw them approaching. With great hospitality, he hurried to meet them and bowed himself toward the ground, pleading, "My Lord, if I have found favor in thy sight, do not pass by thy servant. Let a little water be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree." They answered him, "So do as thou hast said." Abraham, filled with joy, hastened into the tent, calling Sarah to prepare the finest meal, and he fetched a calf tender and good, and gave it to a young man, who hastened to dress it. As they sat under the tree and ate, the visitors spoke, saying, "Where is Sarah thy wife?" Abraham answered, "Behold, in the tent." Then one said, "I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life, and lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son." At this, Sarah, overhearing, laughed within herself, saying, "After I am waxed old shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also?" The Lord spoke unto Abraham, saying, "Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of a surety bear a child, which am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord?" Abraham's heart raced with the truth of the promise, shaken by both the sound of laughter and the deep conviction of the Almighty's word. Moreover, the Lord assured Abraham, "At the appointed time, I will return unto thee, and Sarah shall have a son." Sarah, terrified, denied she had laughed, but the Lord replied, "Nay, but thou didst laugh." Thus, the purpose of God began to break forth from the soil of impossibility. And after this revelation, the visitors rose up and turned toward Sodom, and Abraham walked with them to bring them on their way. The Lord deliberated within himself, saying, "Shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do?" For he had heard the cries of the wicked, and his wrath was to be meted out against the cities of the plain. Abraham, hearing this, stood yet another moment before the Lord and interceded for the righteous, pleading, "Wilt thou destroy the righteous with the wicked? Peradventure there be 50 righteous within the city, wilt thou also destroy and not spare the place for the 50 righteous that are therein?" Thus began a profound dialogue, revealing the heart of Abraham, one who sought mercy amid judgment. The Lord responded, "If I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place for their sakes." The negotiations continued, a reflection of God's patience, until a remnant was laid bare. Yet, with each exchange, the divine mystery deepened. The angels descended upon Sodom, and the time for judgment drew near, for the cries of injustice had ascended to heaven. The echo of Abraham's prayer was a whisper of faith. Even when met with sin, grace would reveal itself. But what Abraham did not yet understand was that through intercession, the heart of God was exposed, a plan intricately woven not only for Abraham's seed through Isaac but for all nations, a prelude to the greater deliverance that would come from his lineage, intertwining hope with divine promise. For the plan of salvation was stretching forth, reaching into darkness to kindle light, preparing the world for a day when all would be made new. And it came to pass that the angels came to the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah in the evening, and as they entered, the wickedness of those cities loomed large before them. The Lord's heart was grieved, for the outcry of the innocent had reached his ears, and the measures of justice were at hand. In the twilight, Lot sat in the gate of Sodom when he saw the 2 angels. He rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground, saying, "Behold now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and ye shall rise up early and go on your ways." The angels responded, "Nay, but we will abide in the street all night." Yet Lot pressed them greatly, his urgency was a testament to his awareness of the looming danger, and they turned in unto him. He made them a feast and did bake unleavened bread, and they did eat. But before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round about, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. They called unto Lot, saying, Where are the men which came in to thee this night? Bring them out unto us, that we may know them. Lot went out at the door unto them, and shut the door after him, pleading, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. Behold now, I have 2 daughters which have not known man, let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you, and do ye to them as is good in your eyes, only unto these men do nothing, for therefore came they under the shadow of my roof. The wickedness of Sodom did not abate, and they pressed sore upon Lot, and they said, Stand back. This one fellow came in to sojourn, and he will needs be a judge, now will we deal worse with thee than with them. But the angels reached forth their hands and pulled Lot into the house, shutting the door. They smote the men that were at the door with blindness, so that they wearied themselves to find the door. Then the angel said to Lot, Hast thou here any besides? Son-in-law, and thy sons, and thy daughters, and whatsoever thou hast in the city, bring them out of this place, for we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is waxen great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord hath sent us to destroy it. Lot went out and spake unto his sons-in-law, which married his daughters, and said, Up, get you out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. But he seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-law. When the morning arose, the angels hastened Lot, saying, Arise, take thy wife and thy 2 daughters which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. And as they lingered, the angels laid hold upon Lot's hand, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hands of his 2 daughters, the Lord being merciful unto him, and they brought him forth, and set him without the city. And it came to pass, when they had brought them forth abroad, that the angel said, Escape for thy life, look not behind thee, neither stay thou in all the plain, escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. Lot, filled with fear, pleaded again, Oh, not so, my lord. Behold now, thy servant hath found grace in thy sight, and thou hast magnified thy mercy, which thou hast showed unto me in saving my life, and I cannot escape to the mountain. Thus, the angels granted him this mercy, allowing him to flee to a small city named Zor. And the sun arose upon the earth when Lot entered into Zor. Then the Lord rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven, and he overthrew those cities, and all the plain, and all the inhabitants of the cities, and that which grew upon the ground. But Lot's wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. And Abraham arose early in the morning to the place where he stood before the Lord, and he looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah, and behold, the smoke of the country went up as the smoke of a furnace. Thus did the Lord remember Abraham, and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lot dwelt. For the mercy of the Lord endureth forever, and through this calamity, his covenant shall be preserved, weaving a tapestry of salvation through generations yet to come. For what Abraham truly did not comprehend was that the echoes of destruction were birthing a reflection of grace, preparing the way for a Redeemer, whose mercy would one day sweep across the earth. And Lot fled to Zor, and his heart was filled with trepidation, for the memory of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah haunted him. He could scarcely grasp the sight of their destruction, a smoke rising like the breath of an angry deity, consuming all that was wicked upon the earth. Even as he found refuge in the small city, the shadows of those grim reminders lingered in his soul. Yet Lot was not alone, the Lord did not forsake him. After some time in Zor, the fear of the inhabitants gripped him, for the wickedness that marred Sodom had seared his conscience. Hence, Lot ventured into the mountains, where he took up residence in a cave with his 2 daughters. As the days turned into weeks, the daughters, seeing the desolation of the earth and the silence of their lives in this remote place, conspired among themselves. One said unto the other, Our father is old, and there is not a man in all the earth to come in unto us, after the manner of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, that we may lie with him, and preserve seed of our father. And in the night, emboldened by their desperation, they fulfilled their plan. The elder daughter went in first, and when the morning light broke, she saw that her father knew not what had befallen him. Thus, their lineage would emerge from this grievous act, and he knew it not. And it came to pass that the younger daughter followed suit, and thus the seed of Lot was multiplied in a manner most unclean, leading to the birth of two nations, Moab and Ammon, who would dwell in enmity with the people of Israel for generations. Meanwhile, afar off on the plains, the echoes of destruction brought comfort to none who dwelt in the vicinity. Their hearts were heavy, and they feared the retribution of the Lord might extend to them also. Yet, in contrast, the heart of Abraham was ever seeking the face of God. He had observed the flames that consumed the wicked, but his spirit was drawn to the prayer he had lifted for the righteous. Then the Lord appeared unto Abraham, saying, I have heard thy prayers, my servant, for the sake of the 10 righteous, I would have spared the cities. Though they are no more, my covenant with you stands firm. From you shall come a great nation, a blessing to all mankind. I will raise from your seed a covenant people, one that shall reflect my glory. Abraham, feeling the weight of divine promise interwoven with sorrow, bowed low before the Lord, his spirit uplifted with the assurance of future grace. He knew that what had transpired in the plains signified a far-reaching plan that reached beyond judgment, opening the door to redemption. But in the quiet shadows of the mountains, Lot's fate was yet a mystery, shrouded in pain and hardship. However, amidst the turmoil, God's hand was not idle. The Lord's thoughts toward Lot were for good, not for evil, to bring him to an expected end, even as the unfolding tapestry of his sovereignty wove its intricate designs. And as Lot pondered on the legacy of despair left in Sodom, the heavens above stirred, for the divine purpose was working, and a new dawn awaited, a dawn that would, through the lineage of Lot, unveil a greater mystery, the coming of a deliverer from the least and most unlikely of places, who would change the course of history forever. And it came to pass, in the fullness of time, that the promise of God unfolded, for Sarah conceived and bore a son to Abraham, whom she named Isaac. The laughter that once echoed in disbelief now erupted in joy, filling the tent with glorious celebration. God has made laughter for me, Sarah declared, everyone who hears will laugh with me, Genesis 21 verse 6. With Isaac's birth, the covenant promise blossomed vibrantly, illuminating all that had been cloaked in hours of longing, uncertainty, and testing. Abraham, now the father of 2 nations, delightfully embraced this long-awaited child, nurturing him with love and devotion. The years of waiting crystallized into testimony, an unshakable foundation of faith that Abraham bore within his heart. He would teach Isaac the ways of the Lord, shaping him into the inheritor of the promises, allowing the legacy of divine promise to flow from one generation into the next. Yet as Sarah beheld Hagar's son, Ishmael, wandering in the tents, the shadows of past decisions resurfaced, igniting strife within the family. Cast out this bondwoman and her son, she implored of Abraham, her heart refusing to share the promise with another. Abraham, distressed by her words, sought the Lord in prayer, seeking wisdom and guidance. The Lord met him within the silence of his troubled heart, assuring him, Fear not, for in Isaac shall thy seed be called, Genesis 21 verse 12. And thus, with renewed faith, he cast out Hagar and Ishmael into the wilderness, trusting God to care for the boy and his mother. In that expanse of desolation, God did not forsake Hagar and Ishmael. He encountered them at a well of water, where he assured them that Ishmael would also become a great nation. For even in the deserts of human despair, the hand of mercy reaches down, sewing together the threads of grace. The echoes of divine compassion whispered through the wilderness, assuring them the promise rested upon them too. And as the seasons turned, God tested Abraham's faith once more. He called him to offer Isaac as a sacrifice on Mount Moriah. Abraham, undeterred by the weight of obedience, arose early, steadfast in heart. Each step taken toward the mountain echoed the faith that was forged through trials past. Silent prayers accompanied him, and not a word escaped his lips as he placed the wood upon Isaac's shoulders. The weight of the task was heavy, yet he pressed onward, guided by the promise that remained unbroken. At the peak, as Abraham prepared the altar, a trembling Isaac raised the question, Father, where is the lamb for the burnt offering? The pivotal moment hung in the air, heavy with divine mystery. God will provide himself a lamb, he proclaimed, his faith gazing beyond the present darkness into the assurance of God's provision. Just as the knife gleamed in the sunlight, the voice of the Lord called from the heavens, "Abraham! Abraham!" With trembling hands, he paused, realizing that God had provided a ram in the thicket, a foreshadowing of the ultimate sacrifice to come, sealing forever the covenant promise through the lineage of Isaac. Abraham's heart rejoiced, for he fully understood that in the surrender of his beloved son, he had gained an everlasting legacy. The covenant was unequivocally reaffirmed: "In blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven." Genesis 22 verse 17. Generations yet to come would rise, bearing the fruits of faith consigned in that very moment, a testimony stretching across epochs, echoing through the hearts of countless believers. In the valleys of their history, Abraham, Sarah, Lot, and Hagar, each etched in the annals of God's covenant, understood that divine timing and purpose wove through trials and triumphs alike. The crux of their story unfurled, revealing a greater narrative directed by his sovereign hand, proclaiming that every act of faith mattered in the greater tapestry spun for future generations. And thus, the legacy of Abraham's faith became a breakthrough for all nations. It pointed toward a promise beyond themselves, the promise of a Redeemer to come, through whom the world would be reconciled. Each footstep laid a cornerstone of hope, awaiting the day when the broader design of God's ultimate redemption plan would lead all humanity to the feet of grace, where promises converge in the everlasting covenant of love. Oh, beloved, the time is now to reflect on his faithfulness. Share this story of how God wove his beautiful design through trials and triumphs. Subscribe immediately to stay connected with God's Word and not miss the next powerful biblical accounts that inspire and uplift. Leave a like now to help spread God's truth through the algorithm, allowing this testimony to reach more souls. Comment below, sharing your spiritual reflections and how this story has impacted your faith, for we long to hear your voices. And don't wait one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience the unwavering truth of God's covenant love. Together, let us illuminate the world with his glorious story.